Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my long overdue late review of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I could make a joke about how it's been an odyssey to finally get here, but that's kind of pointless. I played it on the Xbox One, it's also available on the PS4 and PC. So we will start with this story. You play as either Alexios or Cassandra. They are a son or daughter of a great Spartan leader. They're descendants of Leonidas. They can wield his spear, but unfortunately, as you learn pretty early on, things went wrong in Sparta. You were forced to flee. And after fleeing, you are basically adopted by a dude named Marcos. He raises you as a mercenary, and eventually you decide you want to leave the island you are on, which embroils you in a much, much larger adventure. The game takes place during the Peloponnesian War, and you can actually help either side as you see fit in different areas, but that's not necessarily the core of it. The core of it is there's an evil secret cult. You know, pretty traditional Assassin's Creed fare. Let's get into the audio of this game. It's an Assassin's Creed game, it's Ubisoft, so it's going to be high quality. For the most part, let's talk about the music. The music is really good. I really like the music in this game. I've always been a fan of the music in the Assassin's Creed franchise. I think it's got a great theme that everyone knows the second they hear it. And the music really does stand out in the game. As for the audio, I think the audio is very good in this game. I think they do a good job with the different sound effects, making the populated areas sound populated, the, unpopulated areas sound like out in the wilds. And the combat is good. It's a little over the top in the sound effects area, but that fits with the game, especially with where they've been moving with the Assassin's Creed franchise. It's a lot more over the top than it started out being, so it's, combat-wise, it makes sense to have a slightly more over-the-top sound effects. As for the voiceover work, the majority of it is fantastic. Obviously, any of the main characters, they're very well done, but it's some of the side characters that you interact with for quests and missions and whatnot that suck. Some of them are really terrible, and it stands out when they are terrible, even if they're there just for a short while. Because in those interactions, you have the guy who sounds terrible talking to, the main character who sounds fantastic, and you're just like, hey. But let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is very much an open world RPG, which is very much the direction Assassin's Creed has been moving in. I should say action RPG, but once again the combat is very much action oriented. You are very much leveling up as you complete quests and missions and, kill enemies. Which, if that doesn't sound like an RPG to you, I don't know what really would. I will say the map is massive in this game. Possibly a little too big. This is definitely one of those games where it's just too big for its own good. I mean, it's great that there's a lot of content, but at the same time, there is so much to do that it feels daunting to get into the game. You really haven't even unlocked a bunch of the basic stuff until you're 8 hours into the game. You barely have any clue what's going on until you're at least 8 hours into the game. And so it's huge. It's just a little too huge. There are long stretches of just traveling across Greece, whether it be by boat or on a horse, because it's such a large world. And it's a huge map with so many side missions, so many main missions. There's also very much a looter element to it where you get a bunch of different swords. You're constantly swapping in and out your gear as necessary. You're constantly getting new gear, whether it's better or not. Who cares? You're getting it. There's also now the mercenary system where you are ranked as a mercenary, and the way you climb the ladder is battling other mercenaries, and if you're wanted, they'll come and try and kill you, and you can hunt them if you feel like it, as well as, again, pursuing all the different side missions. There's also naval battles, there's hunting, there's gathering, there's just, it gets to be a bit too much, honestly. Which is too bad, because at its core, I do enjoy it, but it's one of those games where there's just so much going on, it's nuts. Let's get into the controls, which I gotta say, I like the controls. The only complaint I do have with the controls is the position of the dodge button. I feel like most games have it as the B button, whereas in this game it's the X, and so there were times where I was definitely trying to dodge, and just instinctively I was going for the B button, and I wasn't dodging, and then I was getting hit, and I was like, oh shit, I need to hit the X button to dodge. Besides that, which I think is just not an entirely natural thing, but it is something you get used to and learn, it's kind of rewiring your brain a little bit. I think the controls work well. I like the movement controls, I like the camera controls. I felt like they were very responsive. I will say, on the Xbox controller, I don't love using the right bumper so much for attacks, but I know that on the PlayStation, with the R1 and R2 placement, it's easier. I just didn't feel like it was quite as natural on the Xbox controller. So I definitely switched over to my Elite, and I made one of the paddles my right bumper for easier attacking. That being said, once I did that, I was doing much better in the combat. Let's get into the visuals. This is still a really beautiful looking game. I will say it's probably not the best looking game right now, you know, considering it's like, what, 2 years old at this point. But that aside, it's still a really good looking game, and they really brought Greece to life. But not just Greece, ancient Greece. I think the design of the islands and the world itself, having never been to Greece but having seen plenty of pictures, I think it looks fantastic. I really enjoy the way that looks, and I like the clothing design, the armor, the weapons. I think all of that looks really good. I think the characters are well done. I think their design overall fits with the game, and it fits with the world that they've built. I also like that, you know, picking Cassandra or Alexios, it does make physical differences, it makes some dialogue differences as well, but the other cool thing is that all the different armor and weapons, they do look different. There's a ton of armor and weapon designs, and I just like that in a game when you're swapping out weapons and armor regularly. I like that they look different. Now, I mean, not every single piece is unique, but there's enough unique designs that it's cool. I also think when you're out in the water on your ship, it's beautiful. Sailing in this game is a beautiful looking thing. But now we're going to get into a few glitches that I ran into, one being a shark swimming around on the ground. Like, that was interesting looking. But worse was, there are times where enemies are going to do heavy unblockable attacks, and there are times where they're going to do regular attacks. When they're doing the heavy unblockable attacks, they kind of glow reddish orange. And unfortunately, there were times where the game would glitch, and they would continue to glow reddish orange. And so you wouldn't know if what they were about to do was going to be an unblockable attack or a blockable attack. And on some of the mercenary fights, those can take a little while, like a couple of minutes or more. So when they're doing that the entire fight, you just don't necessarily know what you need to do, and it can in fact lead to your death. So to wrap this up, I'm gonna say I do enjoy Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but overall, it's definitely not one of my favorites, which is tragic because I really love ancient Greece. I love the story they're telling. I love the mythical elements they are entangling with the story and the world. I enjoyed the gameplay a lot, and I enjoy that there's a good amount to do, but at the same time, it goes too far with there being just too much going on, and it gets really daunting. And I don't necessarily want to jump into a game and have it feel like a daunting task to enjoy the game. So I am going to say that if you are not a massive Assassin's Creed fan, you can skip this. If you are a huge Assassin's Creed fan, it's worth playing, it's worth enjoying, but you gotta sink a lot of time into it. So my recommendation is, it's for Assassin's Creed fans. This is not a great one to jump into for newbies to the franchise. Unless, of course, you're just looking for a truly massive game. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, are you disappointed that Assassin's Creed has not gone to Japan yet? I know it's an easy concept, but come on, it's what we want. Not that I'm not down with Vikings. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, and if you like what I'm doing in general, share, subscribe. Have a good one. Once again, I mean, the majority of it, but let's get into the game.